The real immediate gap going into the market is that you have an experience gap, and that is hard to close, but the gap which is easier to close is always the technical gap. That's something that as a junior, you really do have the time and capacity to focus on this thing, that it really is something that you can accelerate really quickly.
Welcome to Stuck in Design, where our founders share candid conversations about design, creativity, and business. Let's begin. As design grads are unleashing themselves into the design industry, do you have any advice on things that they should do and things that they should avoid?
Yeah, so especially this post-COVID time, everyone is kind of worrying about, okay, are my skill sets still relevant? I think for any junior designer, the real immediate gap going into the market is that you have an experience gap, right? Most of the time it's an experience gap, but and that is hard to close because working with X number of industries on X number of clients just takes time. You can't get that in an instant. But the gap which is easy to close or easier to close is always the technical gap, because you can spend a whole month hold up and improve a particular technical skill set, whether it's something as basic as sketching to learning a more complicated software. But that's something that as a junior grad or junior employee, you really do have the luxury of time and capacity to focus on this thing, that it really is something that you can accelerate really quickly. I think that the temptation is always to go in and say, hey, I want to learn everything, and the strategic pieces in design are really exciting as well. But there are some of those parts which are really harder to learn because they don't just comprise of technical skill sets, but there's also some implicit softer skill sets which take experience, right? So anything which requires that, like even things like manufacturing, which requires experience working with a lot of factories or different kind of industries, that it's really hard to buy that. But other skill sets which you can buy with just sheer putting in the hours, those are stuff that as a fresh grad you can do really quickly. And if you can kind of align your passion, sounds cheesy, right? If you can align your passion with the time that you're willing to spend on this, then you can actually carve quite a significant niche in whatever that is you're doing. So there's two ways to do it, right? One is being really practical about it and look at, okay, what are the industries out there which are hiring or which pay me well, and which is the most critical skill set, and then I target in and I kind of get kick-ass at that. And the other one is to say, okay, maybe I'm more self-reflective and I say, okay, this is what I can enjoy doing for the next 5 to 10 years. And I focus on that and I get really good at that. Then I find the right organizational match for this skill set. Yeah, so it works both ways, and I think it's fair. Yeah.
Actually, speaking about kind of the COVID situation, right? Do you actually see this drastically impact fresh grads, particularly in the design industry?
There's always two sides of it, right? With something that has not happened for like 100 years, there's always an element of unknown or of change. And the good thing about design is design thrives on looking at, what are the changes in our society today, and how can we position our design solutions to take advantage of opportunities or behaviors that arise from this change. So I think it is about applying that own lens to yourself, your career, and your practice, and say, hey, as a designer, this is an unprecedented event, but it's also an interesting opportunity. And what does it mean for my skill sets, my talents as a designer, to apply myself in different ways? Because in some industries, yeah, they're tanking, right? And restructuring heavily. Like we just saw the news from Grab, and they're shrinking their UI UX team by a huge amount. But that also means that there's a glut of kind of experienced UI UX designers on the market. There's going to be small firms, startups, which are nimble enough and poised to take on these hires and try new things. If you're in the position to say that, hey, I'm a fresh grad, these are where kind of the good designers are going, it becomes an interesting opportunity to say, hey, I can learn alongside these people as well, or better yet, start something up with them because you're willing to take the risk and they are as well. That opens doors to new kind of opportunities. Similarly, there are organizations which are thriving during this period. You can also ride the wave and say, hey, there are certain organizations which are just doing really well during this period as well. How can I see myself fit into that picture? I think as maybe not just designers, but human beings, right? We are quite geared to react quickly to the situation, right? Because you see a need and you try and fill that need. And there is opportunity in being first movers, right? Like you see, hey, there's a big gap in this market. Let's go in and fill it because like the big companies are taking too long to do something about it. And as a nimble outfit or as an individual, you can do that really quickly. Then there's the other part of it, which is not just the knee-jerk reaction, but a more long-term, if you can sit down and consider what are the longer-term implications. And of course, that comes with a risk, right? Because you're doing a little bit of speculation. But if you can do that, then you're poised to write the second part of the opportunities, right? Not the immediate opportunities, but what will come after that when behaviors change, or when the economy recovers, or when new opportunities out of this thing start to emerge. If you can do both, then fantastic, then you're set, you're a genius.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if I were a fresh grad and kind of like feeling a bit worried about the current situation, I feel like that would be quite comforting to hear.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so if you are local, right? Yes, you're Singaporean. The reality is you do have quite a decent cushion for risk by now, because I think a large number of the population kind of are middle income, right? If you just graduated and you're living in Singapore, you're probably still staying with your parents, and you do have a propensity to say like, hey, you know what, even if I don't make an income for a year, I'm not gonna die. And that gives you the cushion to actually do something instead of bumming off for a year. So that becomes an interesting opportunity as well, like growing up in a pretty risk-averse society, because Singapore is comfortable after all. It is an opportunity to take some risks. If you can stomach it and your personal situation is set up for it, the downside is a lot less than the upside. Of course, it also works the other way around, that if you have a lot to lose, then you're more vested in success and kind of you're going to make damn well sure that you succeed. And we have some colleagues or some acquaintances who are like that as well.
Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next week to get stuck in design.